I'd like to welcome everyone back to my YouTube channel. My name is Frank DiMora. I am the author of the book, The Last Chronicles of Planet Earth, which is a documentary on Bible prophecy and current events. You can get this book by going to the address in the lower right-hand corner, www.endtimesresearchministry. And here on my YouTube channel, I connect the dots between Bible prophecy and current events to show you with a very clear picture that we are seeing the identical same things that our Lord warned about that we would see in the last days. Now I'm going to start off with the Psalm 83 war because I believe that this is going to be the next war that will be fought. We find this in the Old Testament in Psalm 83. Now, what I'm going to do is just give you a short synopsis of who the Lord shows us that is going to be attacking Israel in the last days. You could stop the frame if you want and take a look, number 1 through 10. The ones on the left-hand side, the names, those are the Old Testament names, and on the right you'll see the modern-day people that are going to attack Israel. Now, I want you to center on the Jordanians for this next report that I'm going to be showing you. But all of these nations that you're looking at here in the Old Testament that are going to become as a confederacy, as you're going to see, they are now being inundated with ISIS, and you're going to see the importance of this. But I just wanted to make sure that you know who it is that will be coming against Israel in the last days as they get targeted Israel. Now I'm going to be very specific in this prophecy because of what I'm reading in the news. And again, it does have to do with ISIS. This is Psalm 83 verses 1 through 5. It says, "Keep not thou silence, O God, hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God, for lo, thy enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people," and of course he's talking about Israel, "and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, Come." Now, when it says they have said, it's the enemies of Israel. They have said, "Come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance." So Israel's enemy, they're coming together with this crafty scheme, saying that they're going to wipe out the nation of Israel. And then verse 5, "For they have consulted together with one consent, and they are confederate against thee." So very plainly, we have an enemy of Israel that has come together bordering the nation of Israel. Confederate army coming down to wipe out Israel, so the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. The news that came out today, October the 23rd, 2015, is from the JewishPress.com with the headline, "ISIS warns Jews in Hebrew, you're next to be slaughtered." Now, if you want to go over and listen to this speech, there is a video there. I'll put the link up so that you can go over and click the link and listen to the speech, but it is in Arabic. It says, "ISIS released a video in Israeli Arabic accented Hebrew, ranting and warning the Jews that Islamic State plans to come to Israel to slaughter and eradicate everyone until no Jews are left in Jerusalem, Israel, and the world." So just in this first paragraph, we see identical verbiage as we just saw from the first part of Psalm 83. Now the next sentence is very important. "They would first overrun Jordan, after which they would overrun Israel from every direction." Well, as I told you, Jordan was involved in this war. So Jordan at this particular moment does not have ISIS in Jordan. This becomes very important because ISIS is in just about every other place besides Jordan. And when Jordan is infiltrated by ISIS, if that's what really happens, that means that Israel will be surrounded, and all the bordering nations surrounding Israel, just like we saw in the Psalm 83 war, will be ready to attack Israel. And is it going to happen? Well, the Bible prophecy in Psalm 83 That's exactly what it tells us is going to happen. So ISIS, moving into each and every one of these nations, comes together with a plan to wipe out the nation of Israel, so her name isn't mentioned anymore. Identical to Psalm 83. It goes on, ISIS has been focusing a lot of attention on Israel lately, and local ISIS-affiliated terrorist cells have been captured by Israeli security forces. A number of the Israeli Arabs have joined ISIS in Syria and Iraq. Of course, Syria and Iraq are two of the other nations mentioned in the Psalm 83 war. This may be the first time that the Islamic organization has spoken directly to Israelis in Hebrew. We're going to move down to this paragraph right here. At the beginning of the video, he turns to the camera and says, "This is a serious and clear announcement to all the Jews, the first enemy of Muslims. To all the Jews who conquered our country, the Muslims, the real war has not yet started yet. And everything you had before is simply called a child's play compared to that which is coming to happen to you in the near future. Inshallah, God willing." So what he's talking about, all the things that happened to Israel, no doubt they're talking about the previous wars. So this person, whoever he is claiming that this next war is going to be a magnificent war, something that they've never seen before. And essentially he's telling the truth, because all he's doing is telling us the same thing that we saw in the Psalm 83 war. Now the thing that you need to know is that when this major attack comes from all the nations that are around Israel, if nobody stops ISIS, and at this point it doesn't look like they are going to stop ISIS, it will be up to Israel to eliminate the ISIS terrorist organization. And when they come down into Israel, they're going to make a big mistake. Israel is more powerful than ISIS can ever imagine. ISIS will lose the war. Now, Israel may take a big hit, but ISIS will lose the war. Israel will still be standing, and her name will not be written off. The people living in Israel, the Jews, will still be there after the Psalm 83 war is over. Now, what could be an indicator that Israel has to win this war? Well, when you read the prophecies about the Jews rebuilding the temple and starting off their sacrifices, like Jesus warned, and as we see in the 9th chapter of the book of Daniel, since the Jews don't have the temple yet, they haven't started their official sacrifices. At the moment they're practicing their animal sacrifices. So that tells us that the Jews are going to have the temple. They are going to do the sacrifices, and obviously they couldn't do that under a thumb of ISIS. So ISIS would have to be eliminated first before any Islamic nation would witness the rebuilding of this third temple. That's one indication that the bordering nations around Israel, those Psalm 83 nations, have to be defeated before the temple is actually built and these sacrifices begin again. And starting here, speaking of the current wave of terror, he expresses the hope that ISIS will arrive and destroy Israel. He promises the annulment of the Sykes Picot borders, which in 1916 divided the dying Ottoman between France and Great Britain. And they're referring to the Ottoman Empire, the Turkish Ottoman Empire that ruled. He boasts of having already eliminated the Syrian-Iraqi border, again, both in the Psalm 83 war, and foretells erasing the Syrian-Jordanian border too, a direct threat against King Abdullah II of Jordan. He then promises removing the Syrian-Palestinian borders too, which is a curious promise because that could mean the end of the dream of the Palestinian statehood. Under Ottoman rule, Palestine was ruled by a governor who sat in Damascus. So a lot of promises by ISIS that are identical to what we see in Psalm 83. And to me, it's no coincidence. It's just the Lord showing you, prepare to see my words come to pass. Now keep in mind, I'm talking about Jordan here, and also keep in mind about my warnings about the Temple Mount area, this most volatile area in East Jerusalem that is owned by the Jews, but it's run by King Abdullah. You'll see the significance of Jordan and this Temple Mount area in this next article. It comes to us October the 23rd of 2015, IsraelNationalNews.com. Radical cleric to Jordan annulled the peace treaty with Israel. Sheikh Rad Shalah calls on Jordan to announce that Muslims have sole ownership of the Temple Mount even at the expense of peace. I've told you over and over again, it's all about the ownership of the Temple Mount. Please go back and review some of my videos. I repeat this message over and over again. I'll continue to repeat it because I believe without a question that the Temple Mount area, the ownership, is going to cause the next war. Sheikh Rad Shalah, head of the radical northern branch of the Islamic movement, is continuing to incite against Israel, this time calling on Jordan to annul the peace treaty with Israel. Shalah claimed on Thursday that Israel is taking advantage of the treaty with Jordan to impose a division of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which will allow for Jewish worship at the mosque. See, they're worried, as I've been warning, that the Jews are making headway to go up and be able to pray and do what they want on this mosque area where the first and the second temple once stood, and it's driving these people crazy. In a letter to the Jordanian government, the content of which was published in the Hamas-affiliated newspaper Palestine, Shalah wrote that the clauses of the peace agreement grant permission to each of the parties to enter places of religious and historical importance, and on this basis, Israel is claiming it has an implied consent to enter the Al-Aqsa Mosque. He called on the Jordanian government to clarify that any interpretation of the clauses of the treaty which are contrary to the exclusion of the perpetual right of Muslims to all of Al-Aqsa is annulled, even if it means canceling the entire peace treaty with Israel. The Islamic movement has been repeatedly involved in several incitement-laced activities, including the violent Nakba Day protests calling for an intifada. Now, intifada means that's an uprising against Israel, and rioting on the Temple Mount, all of which I've been discussing with you in my previous videos. Shalah himself has labeled Israeli leaders terrorists and enemies of Allah in a speech to Muslims in Beersheba, and was also jailed for 5 months in 2010 for spitting at an Israeli police officer. So I'm praying that you're seeing what I'm seeing, because Jordan is one of the nations, you know now, that will be coming against Israel. Paul talked about the call for peace and safety and sudden destruction. Well, the sudden destruction is going to be war. Again, pointing to this mosque, the area where the Dome of the Rock is. So very, very connected. Current events, Bible prophecy. Please pay attention to what's going on, especially East Jerusalem and this Temple Mount area. Moving into another prophecy, Jesus gives us a warning about a couple things I want to mention in this prophecy of Matthew chapter 24, verses 6 through 7. Notice what he says. You will hear wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. Well, we know that there's war going on. All you have to do is take a look at the Middle East. But moving to Africa, we want to show you what's going on in Sudan, because Sudan has been in the grips of a civil war and starvation, famine, two of the things that we see in Matthew chapter 24. You'll see from the BBC News that came out yesterday, October the 22nd, 2015, the headline, South Sudan War, 30,000 people face starvation, UN warns. At least 30,000 people are facing starvation in South Sudan, the UN has said. 3 UN agencies warn that a famine could develop in southern Unity State where fighting has prevented deliveries of humanitarian aid. 2 years of civil war have left nearly 4 million people, particularly young people, facing severe hunger, the UN said. Both the government and the rebel forces have accused each other of breaching a peace agreement signed in August. The conflict has left a third of the country's population is in crisis, up 80% since last year. The UN's Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, Children's Agency, UNICEF, and the World Food Program, WFP, said in a joint statement. People are on the edge of a catastrophe that can be prevented, said WFP Chief Joyce Lima. And of course now the fighting has messed with the crops. Notice what it's saying. Fighting has disrupted harvest, food, and fuel prices have risen, and some displaced families are being forced to survive on a single daily meal of fish and water lilies. Now I want to point this out to you because you may not have caught this if you haven't read the Bible, but in Revelation chapter 6 verse 6 we see the Lord pointing to wheat and barley, and we know that from this scripture, if you do a study from it, obviously people are going to have to work all day long for one small meal. It mentions wheat and barley, only a quart of wheat and maybe a little bit more than that of barley. But it's not enough for a family. It's enough maybe one person for one single meal. So that means that the food is going to go through the roof during the tribulation period. Now, in a tribulation period, we know that the fighting that we're seeing in isolated countries now is going to be worldwide. So in this article, for example, when it's talking about the prices of the food going up because of war, just imagine how it's going to be during the tribulation period when there's world war, all the horrendous climate changes as well, causing mass destruction of crops, and even if there is crops, there would be great disturbance because of wars that are being played out and people can't attend to the crops like they normally would. So everything converges to fulfill Bible prophecy. That's why I wanted to point this out, because we're seeing that kind of thing right here in South Sudan. Now moving to Hosea chapter 4 verse 3, where we see the fish of the sea are going to be dying off. I've been giving you updates almost on a daily basis, and there's a new one that came in today, another report from Vietnam, October the 23rd of 2015. And here we have the seafood factories deny responsibility for mass fish poisoning. So there in Vietnam, it says the farmers said that their fish stopped feeding, became lethargic and died, apparently due to a lack of oxygen in the water. And I've been showing people left and right all of the reports about fish dying in the water because of lack of oxygen. This is just another one of those reports. They blamed the fish deaths on the dumping of untreated waste by seafood processing factories located in Tan Hai Commune. Now there's also another report that's coming from New Zealand, October the 23rd, 2015. And this report from 3 News, Dead Fish Mystery Investigated. I don't know how many times you'll be seeing reports like this that I've been showing you about fish death mysteries, trying to figure out what the heck is killing off these fish in mass numbers. It says the mystery of the dead salmon in Marlborough Sounds fish farm is being worked on by a government agency and the farm's owner, NZ King Salmon. Officials from the Ministry of Primary Industries and industry representatives met yesterday to mull the causes of the high fish mortalities. So when you read the rest of the article, you'll find out the cause of these mass deaths, which they believe is including the high water temperatures, water flow, diet, and even sea anemone stings. Bottom line is, almost every day we're seeing mass die-offs of fish. I'd like to invite you to keep coming back to my YouTube channel and my website, because I'm listing these reports as they come in daily. This is Frank DiMora from the End Times Research Ministry saying, have a great weekend. Wait for the Lord Jesus Christ. You never know when He's going to call your name to come home. Just be ready when He does by receiving Jesus today if you already haven't done it.